Hello there, my esteemed guest. I'm Mr. Ribbons, and this is my lovely house. Won't you come in? You're new to the neighborhood, and when you went to meet all of your neighbors, he'd been ever so gracious to invite you to dinner. When Mr. Ribbons invited you to dinner, there was nobody else present. Strangely enough, Mr. Ribbons lived in a 2-story house, so you just assumed that his family wasn't there at the time. It was around 6:30. Being wintertime, it was already dark outside. Mr. Ribbons and you had just walked into his house. He showed you around his house. It was a lovely house. The family room had an enormous flat-screen TV. The dining room had a lovely chandelier in the center of it. Right as Mr. Ribbons was about to show you the second floor, a few people walked into the house. It was Mrs. Ribbons, a lovely lady with the long brown hair and gorgeous blue eyes. With her was Olivia Ribbons, the teenage daughter with blonde hair like Mr. Ribbons. Also with them was the young Damon Ribbons, a young boy with brown hair like Mrs. Ribbons. After a while of chatting with Mr. Ribbons, Mrs. Ribbons came out of the kitchen with an almost mouth-watering ham. The dining room table was already ready, with plates and utensils. You and the rest of the Ribbons sat down and began eating. While eating, you couldn't help but notice that Mrs. Ribbons was staring at you with those almost frightening blue eyes of hers. Just as you noticed this, Mr. Ribbons asked where you used to live and other things like that. You replied to every question, but as you do, Mrs. Ribbons is quiet, still looking at you with those blue eyes. Those blue eyes. Those deep blue eyes. A little while after dinner, you and the whole family sat down and watched some football, being Sunday night as it may. You're now starting to get frightened by Mrs. Ribbons. She's staring at you with those blue eyes, but this time, she has an almost devilish grin. The game was soon over, Damon complaining that his team lost again. Soon after, you leave, thanking them for the delightful dinner and experience. But as you're walking across the street to get to your house, you can't help but turn around, only to see Mrs. Ribbons staring you through the window, with those blue eyes and that now devilish grin. Soon after you get back to your house, you go to bed. You wake up to a strange sound. It was louder than tapping, but not as loud as gunfire. It sounds like it's coming from your window. You get up still feeling drowsy and walk towards the window. As you open the blinds to your bedroom window, you jump back. Your heart is beating so fast, it's as if you're going to have a heart attack. What you see is Mrs. Ribbons staring at you with those blue eyes and that now frightening grin. You rub your eyes and see that she's now gone. Soon after, you fall asleep. In the morning, you get on your computer and play this awesome MMO you found online a few weeks ago. As you're about to beat a powerful boss, the doorbell to your house rings. It startles you a little, and you accidentally exit out of the game. You curse yourself as you get up to see who's there. As you open the door, you see Mrs. Ribbons with her son standing there, her blue eyes examining you as you open the door. She asks you if you can watch Damon for a little bit, because the other Ribbons are going to a restaurant that doesn't allow kids under the age of 15 to enter, and their babysitter had cancelled on them. You agree to it, and she even gave you $30 to do something with Damon. She hugs Damon and leaves soon after. As she's walking to Mr. Ribbons' car, she turns around and gives you that creepy look. After a trip to a nearby park and nearly 2 hours at a movie, Damon starts to get bored. He begs if you can go back to his house and play an awesome new video game he got recently. You tell him no. He starts begging, but you still say no. He then hugs onto your right leg and stares up at you with his eyes. You get a little frightened by those eyes, and you finally give in. He pulls a key from his pants pocket, and you take him to his house. He shows you the game and, surely enough, it's that MMO you love to play. He starts playing and he asks you to make some lemonade, telling you where the lemonade mix is. You walk into the kitchen and start making Damon some lemonade. But as you're doing so, Damon runs through the kitchen and yells, "Come find me," and runs upstairs. You don't want to play this childish game, especially in a house that isn't yours. But at the same time, you don't want Damon to get bored again. You go up to find him, only scanning each room so you don't invade the ribbon's privacy. You're about to give up when you hear a giggle coming from up the hallway. You think that you've finally found that brat. As you walk to where you heard the giggle, you notice it. A small room at the end of the hall that Mr. Ribbons didn't show you. It sounds like that's where the giggling is coming from. So you open the door. You scream in horror as you look in that room. You see two silhouettes of people you think you know. The only things you see are blue eyes. You turn on the lights, and you almost scream from what you see. Damon's lying on the floor, with his eyes missing from his face. Instead of his dark green eyes, they've been replaced with blue eyes. You panic and automatically bolt downstairs towards the door, your phone fumbling in your hands as you try to call the police. However, when you get to the door, you almost puke at the sight of Olivia Ribbons, leaned up against the door, her hazel eyeballs ripped out and replaced with those blue eyes that Damon has. You're so startled that you shove the now late Olivia Ribbons aside, but the door is padlocked. You have only one choice: find a hiding spot and call the police. You're running and running, looking around the house for a hiding spot. As you enter Mr. Ribbons' bedroom, you're pulled into his closet. You tried to scream, but the person who pulled you in there has covered your mouth with their hand. As you look up, you see Mr. Ribbons. His face is pale, with the most frightened look ever, his hazel eyes expressing his feeling the most. He whispers to you and tells you to be quiet. You nod, and he removes his hand from your mouth. He starts to tell you that Mrs. Ribbons has always hated any eyes that weren't blue. She told him that one day she'll get rid of the family's non-blue eyes and replace them with her perfect eye color. He tells you he's already called the police and hands you a knife for protection purposes. Suddenly, both of you start hearing a tapping sound. It sounds like it's in front of you. All of a sudden, the closet door is swung open and Mr. Ribbons is dragged out. You're too frightened to move as you hear the cries of agony and pain from Mr. Ribbons. You start to break down and have a panic attack as the desperate cries from Mr. Ribbons stop. You crawl into a pile of Mr. Ribbons' clothes that you presume are dirty. You stay as silent as possible. You suddenly hear a humming sound from outside the closet. And then suddenly, you're being pulled out of your little hiding spot by Mrs. Ribbons. You curse at her and even start to kick her. You manage to kick her in the face. She releases you and you crawl back into the closet to find the knife you dropped. You find it and pick it up, but as you turn around, Mrs. Ribbons kicks the knife out of your hand and picks it up before you. She's cussing at you and starts stabbing you in the stomach, blood gushing out as she does so. You collapse to the floor. She then flips you over so that you're facing her blue eyes. She puts down the knife, seeing that you're too tired to fight anymore, or even struggle at that. She then picks up a different sharp item from Mr. Ribbons' desk. As she leans down to look you in the eye, you hear the sound of police cars in front of the house before you finally close your eyes. You wake up with a bang. You're panting and you feel awfully sweaty. You look around and see that you're back in your room. You get up and walk into your kitchen, still panting about that vivid nightmare you had. As you prepare to make a glass of water, you see a box sitting on your counter. It has a note attached to it. You pick up the note and read, "I hope you enjoy my gift, Mrs. Ribbons." The box had two blue eyes in it.
Thanks for sticking around to the end. And if you enjoyed today's story, make sure to leave a like. And if you want more like it, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story. If you need more now, why not check out my Creepypasta playlist? I'll leave that on this card, and I'll catch you in the next story.